Alrighty, so hello everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Patrick, and I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Abstract. We are really excited about this event. It's the first one that we've thrown as a panel, really diving into the latest regarding everything advocacy, influencing, policy, etc. here in the state of California. And very grateful to have an incredible group of people join me today. So before I get started, I first want to acknowledge that Cynthia was not able to make it. She is one of the partners at California Strategies, also has done a lot of great work in the corporate world. Unfortunately, she had a serious family emergency, so sending prayers her way, and happy to have her in the next event here. And so I did a quick little intro on my end. But before going to intros with this wonderful group of people and diving into these questions, I want to mention that we have a raffle. So we are giving away 2 bottles of wine. I have to mention one of our sponsors is Bogle. Bogle is a great winery. You should check it out. So thank you, Bogle family, for providing wonderful wine. The other sponsor is Popple. They're a digital business card. We were handing out some of them here. Really revolutionizing the way you network with people. So instead of having a bunch of paper business cards, you just tap the card and it shares your information. It's great. So they're doing great. Love their company. We're also giving away Hawaiian coffee because one of our team members is from Hawaii. So there's no sponsor there. And we'll be giving away some notebooks and pens. So with that, we've had the opportunity over the last 3 years to work with over 300 lobbyists, trade associations, nonprofit advocacy groups in our field. And we've seen a lot of different innovations in how people work with legislation, work with PR, really just try and get that advocacy through the door. And so before starting, I'd love to do a quick intro of the wonderful group of people we have here. So starting with Louis. If you can just provide your name, where you work currently, and just quick background.
There we go. Oh, that is working. Thanks, Patrick, for having me. And my name is Louis Morante. I'm Vice President of Public Policy with the Bay Area Council. I work specifically on our housing policy. I've been with the council for about a year, and for about 5 years before then, I was California YIMBY's legislative director. Really helped them get a solid footing in Sacramento, and have worked on several of the biggest housing bills to pass, and many that didn't. But I think one of my prouder accomplishments is working on the state's ADU laws.
My name is Russell Lowry. I'm the managing partner for Highview Strategies. We're a digital advocacy firm. We don't lobby directly, but we support a variety of associations and lobbyists who are active in California around every issue that there is. We've got a finger on most of it. Prior to that, I was a chief deputy at the Board of Equalization. Prior to that, I was a lobbyist for 5 years at PG&E. And prior to that, I was chief of staff to the Senate Republican caucus and negotiating budgets and bonds and transportation bonds, housing, water, a variety of different issues. So I've consumed a lot of the services that we're going to be talking about today.
Hello, my name is Paul Donahue. I am currently not working full-time. I spent a little bit of time trying to give some constructive advice to abstract folks, but I formerly worked for many, many years in the state capitol, and for 4 different committees, I was a committee consultant. Probably spent off and on more than 20 years in that building, but I've been away from it for a few years, and that's about all I have to say, I think.
Thank you. My name is Kate Brandenburg, and I'm with the Brandenburg Group. I'm a contract lobbyist. Been lobbying for, oh my gosh, 30 plus years, and formerly was with the Flanagan Law Firm for many years, which was a hoot. And also worked for Governor Jagmejian and Nielsen Merksmer, so contract lobbyist, and I'm also the president of IGA.
Wonderful. They're all being really humble. They have many more accomplishments, but really grateful to have y'all on board here. So let's get started with this. So when we think about advocacy, the first part is identifying relevant legislation, right? And there's people that lean towards keywords. There's people that lean towards, look, this is the section of code that I care about, so I want to know any bill that's going to affect that. Some people say they hear it through the grapevine. I still do not know what the grapevine is. And so I want to hear your thoughts on how do you detect relevant legislation right now, and how has this changed over, would you say past 5-10 years? And do clients have more access to this information now that they can go to the government website, et cetera? Has that changed that relationship with your client or members? So I'll start with Kate, if you can touch on that.
A lot of questions there. So first of all, I think the best for advocacy, what I like to do is, and this is even before I start looking at legislation, I like to make sure that the client, where he is located, we have conversations with legislators to make sure that the legislators know that my client XYZ is located in his district or her district, and to get them familiar, because I like to be able to go to a member first just without an ask. And now when it's time to look at legislation, I will look at, it just all depends. Is it something that we're going to sponsor? Let me look back in the history. And the ability of technology has made it so much easier over the years. I mean, I started looking at legislation in 1981, and everything was paper. Everything, we would read journals, daily journals. They still have them, but no one knows what they are. They'll look at it and go, what is this? What is this for? Daily histories, all of that. So technology has made, I think, from an advocacy role and also from a client's role, a lot easier to find what has transpired in the past. So I will look back, do my research, see what has transpired over the years, and then determine who would be the best legislator to advocate for it. Is it something we want to do that is a local issue? So again, that's when you want to make sure that the legislators know who your client is and what they're all about.
That's amazing, amazing. And Louis, you're part of the Bay Area Council. It's a little bit different than a contract lobbying firm with clients. So, what's your process like? Do you start, from the legislator part? Do you look at, where your members based, et cetera? Walk me through how you start that process.
Sure. So the council has about 330 members, most of which are the larger employers in the Bay Area. We try to take a Bay Area specific lens to business issues. Our membership includes, though, more than businesses. We have public agencies. We have several unions. And we're really focused, I think, at most on convening folks around the most important issues facing the region, housing being top among them, at least in my opinion. Don't tell them I said that. The way that I've gone about this with our members is, I think technology has made it so easy where I can come up with a list of bills that I think are worthy of their attention and put it in front of them and get their feedback on it super easily within an hour, right? And all of a sudden I am empowered then to go start talking to people and making change on that. I think it's actually been really helpful too for some of my bigger members who have slightly different perspectives on legislation. They'll point things out to me and say, oh, have you considered that this might do that? And that's always really helpful to then share back to the group because it makes me look a lot smarter than I actually am. So yeah, I can't imagine doing this job without the tech we have now. And I'm actually, I think we'll talk a little bit about it later. I'm really excited for what ChatGPT can actually do. I have already started lazily using ChatGPT quite a lot to write letters, and I think the opportunities that it's going to have are they're going to open a lot of doors. I will say though that the best way is still to learn about stuff is through your network, through the grapevine. I want to give a shout out to Brian in the back there, helps run the Home Builders Association. Brian from Lighthouse Public Affairs, my man back there. Right, he runs the HBA's lobbying group, and that's a really great platform for everybody sharing what they're working on, giving folks feedback about where they might have concerns, and so yeah, stay close to your friends. I think is key there.
I'm starting to understand what the grapevine is, but I still have many questions. Okay, so once you have, whatever bills, regulations, any sort of policy documents or issues that matter, what are the steps now that you take to advocate or influence? And I'd like to hear, I guess, more traditional sense, like Paul, what have you seen over the years in terms of coalition building versus, testifying at hearings, et cetera? And then Russell, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you see tech changing this. I know you've done a lot with social media, a lot of more on the digital advertising side, which is really fascinating. So we'd love to hear both of y'all's perspective, once you have identified those issues.
Well, it's hard to say, but one of the biggest changes I think that has come about over the last couple of decades is the knowledge base of the members of the legislature has diminished. Not because they're stupid, but because they're green. They haven't been here very long. 6 years is kind of typical. 8, now you can go 12, but before that there were members and the staff that were affiliated with those members were there in the building for years, and they developed a policy expertise in a particular area, for example, housing or energy, that they were the experts. Nowadays, the lobbyist or the advocate or the client sometimes coming along with the lobbyist, they have to be the ones that instruct and tell the members why this is important, why you care about this, why if you don't do X or Y, what the consequences will be. But they don't really have a working knowledge of this issue oftentimes, especially the newer members. So it's an opportunity, and it's also a real advantage for the technology-driven lobbyist or client or both, because knowledge has always been power in the legislature and in Congress and everywhere else in government. So if you've got the knowledge, and one of the exciting things about abstracts is that the legislation can be tracked all the way back to 1989 currently, and that's critically important, especially when you're trying to convey the history of an issue to someone. If you've got the ability to be able to search and develop a whole narrative on how this came to be, it puts you in a pretty good place.
And I would love to chat later about your thoughts on the shift in the legislature and the staffers, because I feel like that's a whole nother conversation. But Russell, would love to hear your thoughts on, I know we've talked a lot about various tactics with digital marketing, social media to influence outcomes, which is very different from, maybe in some ways similar to coalition building, but very different from testifying at a hearing, right? You're working with constituents, mass group of people. So would love to hear your thoughts on how you've seen tech shape that.
Sure, and Kate kind of touched on it. She starts, as most professional lobbyists do, never losing sight of members. At the end of the day, after all the plots, plans, schemes, and strategy, at the end of the day, members vote, and you lose sight of that, and it's game over. And so I tend to think of it as a fourfold framework. I think you have to deal with members, advocates, staff, and supporters. And the idea that you're going to come up with a message is just silly in this day and age. They all are impactful to what it is you're working on, and they're all going to think and be motivated and respond to different messages. So what I like to do, and as a consumer and producer of a lot of this material, is I tend to be deferential to the lobbyist in that what they're compensated for and their value is understanding the process and what the members need to hear and the nuances of that messaging. And then I work underneath that to try and use coalitions and digital tools to supplement their advocacy, so that I frame the issue so that members are thinking about it and asking the questions that, if we framed it the right way, the lobbyist has a better chance to get a specific member's vote. And so I tend not to think of it as sort of the message for 120 members. I tend to listen to the lobbyist and say, okay, we need these 2 votes in committee. We're having a hard time reaching them. How do we use our coalition to find the right messenger to deliver these words to these members? It's very specific, and I think Abstract offers some tools that will help lobbyists and advocates be much more effective.
So would you say storytelling is core to this?
Sure, we're human beings are storytellers, and we can absorb information in story format. So if you've got 3,000 bills moving, what's the framing? When I say framing, that's a word I use for story. How do you position the bill or the issue, the problem that you're trying to solve, or the concern, or why you need a no vote? What story do you tell that causes the member to be inclined to vote the way that you want them to vote? And I think a big part of that, and one of the tools I'm excited about Abstract about, is the coalition building. In the old days, we called it NASCAR logo lobbying, but it was dun dun dun. You put all the business groups on one letterhead, and no one wanted to go against this job killer. Those things just don't have the impact that they used to have. And so by building a coalition, identifying who's weighed in on a bill, and thinking about it from a member-specific point of view, who does that member need to hear from? And I can look at a list of coalition people. I can look at the content and say, okay, we need someone from this industry to talk to this member to deliver this part of our message. And that kind of really particular targeting, it makes me think some of the logo letterhead is for some client consumption purposes, but I wouldn't rely on that to get a vote in the way I may have leaned on that in the past.
Definitely. No, that makes sense. And I mean, I come from a tech company. We're just a small little player in the space. There's so much going on. And what I'm really excited about is that Louis mentioned this earlier, there's a lot of advancements now in natural language processing. They're called large language models. It's what ChatGPT is built on. And it's essentially close enough to being a human where you can say, hey, summarize this, or hey, what's your thoughts on what the weather is? And ChatGPT will talk to you about it, right? It can do various things on anything that's text-based. So given these advancements in AI, there's also a lot of advancements that are going on the virtual space. So pre-COVID, nobody really knew how to use Zoom. I feel like after COVID, every person I've talked to in this space has Zoom and uses it on a regular basis. What have y'all seen as any core disruptions that technology has brought in the last 5 years and will probably be more significant in the coming years? And we can start with Louis, because I know you mentioned ChatGPT.
Sure. Yeah. I think one of the, I mean, it's hard to say that it's a positive of working on the issue of housing, but you don't have to convince very many people in the legislature that housing is a problem. So delivering them the message, the story that your proposed solution or the thing that you're concerned about has the outcome that you think it does. That's the challenge. But really, it's, I think, getting to people in their districts, especially on issues that have such a broad-based saliency as housing, and getting them to contact legislators that will remain the challenge. That's the tech. There's a tech solution for making that much faster and more efficient that doesn't exist yet. But that would be huge. And, I mean, there are a lot of digital tools and that sort of stuff, but really finding people who want to be spoken to and giving them the opportunity to participate in your campaign there's something that we can really grow there. I'll say the language processing software that is out there, ChatGPT in particular, I would heavily encourage people to use. It's totally going to change the business. If folks aren't familiar with it, it's trained, ChatGPT in particular is trained on almost everything that was written before 2021. And it's more than just for cheating on your essay assignments in college. I have taught ChatGPT almost everything that I have written. I just bulk uploaded it from my computer, told it how to speak like me. I've told it what information is most important to me, like these studies influence my worldview. And I can just go in and say, look, I need you to write a study, or I need you to write a position letter on this 6 set of facts based on my worldview. And it does better than I would. It's incredible. And it does it in 15 seconds. So yeah, advocates that are able to wield that tool are just going to be able to do a lot more work than advocates who can't.
And we may have or may have not been tinkering around with that already, but that's for another discussion. Any thoughts on the virtual disruption with what Zoom has, how that has changed your interaction with legislators or other people in the space? If anyone wants to speak on that.
Sure. So, pre-pandemic, I didn't know anything about Zoom. Pandemic hits, I'm like, okay, how are we going to communicate? And first it was, my sister was freaking out. Oh my gosh, we'll never be able to get together in a room again. Let's have this Zoom call. I'm like, what is a Zoom call? So we get on this call, and I was like, hey, this is pretty cool. It's nice, instead of the, Facebook, not Facebook, what is it? FaceTime.
Yeah, FaceTime.
I thought this is a really neat process. So, once everyone started getting used to using it, it really did help during the pandemic. It allowed me to have that face-to-face. Even though I wasn't sitting in a room, I was able to have that face-to-face conversation with a staffer or a legislator. It's just, you need to see expressions. You need to see how someone is moving, how they're feeling, because body language is a lot. I think a good advocate can better read the room and better understand what is being displayed through the person you're talking to. So from that perspective, I think Zoom, other technology like that, has been very, very helpful. I think it's also been a deterrent. I think I am still, remember, I'm the old one up here, I think. It's being in a room face to face, I think, is the most important thing. I think our meetings need to be face-to-face. I think, hearings need to be, in person. I think that's very, very important. It's a very helpful tool when you can't be in a room. It's great. I'll say it, on a Friday, there are times when I'm like, well, I'm going to work from home today. I'm able to have these conversations. Or I'm working on a piece of legislation, and we have about 40 different people on the call. Zoom has been amazing. No longer do you have to try to get your client or all these people in a room. Okay, we have space now, we can have this meeting. This has been really, really helpful. So I really like it from that perspective. Chat GPT, is that what it's called? You can tell I look at it from a different standpoint. I'm hoping that it doesn't make it so people do not learn how to write, how to think for themselves. I think that's very important. It's also very important to just develop your own ideas, because maybe ChatGPT has one point of view, but it really isn't the point of view you're trying to get across. So that's, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. And I think it could be very helpful. Like Lewis was saying, that you can get documents a lot faster. I mean, I could spend 3-4 hours trying to write up a one-pager, where this might do it in 15 seconds. Amazing. So from that perspective, I think it's great.
Awesome. And then Russell?
I think we can learn a lot by language, and we call them lobbyists. And why do we do that? Because they hung out in lobbies. And the Zoom does not replace that, because if it was just about transmitting industry information from one person to another. There's a variety of different ways that you can do that. What your lobbyist does, a good one, and Kate's one of the best, and so is Lewis, what they're able to do is they bring a trust and a relationship with the member. That's what you're buying when you consume lobbyist service. Not only that, in the process of being in the halls and bumping into people, there's just a valuable exchange of information and data that comes as they're rubbing shoulders with other lobbyists and staff. And there's a deference to, I call them in the building lobbyists, who staff see all the time, and they know that there's a camaraderie of trying to shape and think about public policy. And there are lobbyists who spend a lot of time recruiting clients and socializing and communicating the information that's been dug up by real lobbyists, and the staff and the members know who those real ones are. And so Zoom will serve a function that Kate mentioned, but it's not going to replace someone that is in Paul's office that he knows, that he can share a piece of detailed information with, or point him in the right direction, or just hand a study across the table, or say that's just not going to happen. There's just so much that goes on in a live interaction. And then I'll just end, and sorry for taking a little longer than I wanted, but my whole career exists because I took tons and tons of meeting as a junior staffer. I met people, I absorbed information, I know who to call, and as a 25-year-old, I could ask an experienced lobbyist a question and get world-class experts, not from ChatGPT, but in my office as a 25-year-old, and the lobbyist would get credit for bringing them to my office. And I would get the best possible information in the world. And that, I worry, that efficiency, people may be really hurting themselves. Industry will be fine. Lobbyists will figure out a way to make it work. But junior staffers are really going to hurt themselves if they lose that.
Yeah, and Paul, any closing thoughts on all of this innovation we see? Yeah.
I don't think there's ever going to be a substitute for, in-person, face-to-face interaction, and that's probably true in every business. But it's especially true in the legislative process. It's traditionally always been a kind of hands-on, face-to-face, and the people that are going to be successful, I believe, in the years to come are going to be those that continue that tradition and try to make it happen. And because I think there's a lot of forces at work to keep that from happening. The legislature and state agencies too, they're moving away from that a little bit. They're not as accessible anymore. During the pandemic was a good example. You would go to the Capitol and people had their frickin' door locked.
The lights, yeah.
Doors
like green
locked.
or red, yeah.
And they wouldn't let you, you weren't really invited in. It wasn't open door policy. But back, I'm old. But so I worked in the days where your door was wide open. You didn't even really do your work until after 5 p.m. Mm-hmm. That's when you started. Yeah. Because you were visiting and dealing with people, interacting and meeting with people. So that's the biggest caution, I think, that lobbyists and, yes, technology can help, because if you're a lobbyist or if you're an association director or something, you can have a meeting with all of your association members at once on Zoom, and then you're well armed. But you still have to go over there and talk face-to-face with members and government employees, staffers that are writing regulations. That's a no other discussion, but that's my closing thought on that issue.
Love it. Yeah. So with that, from my hearing, a lot of these processes are not going to change. They are there in terms of just how government works. But really the way in which tech is transforming everything is more on the efficiency side. And a lot of people worry, is ChatGPT going to replace my job? Is it going to replace these functions? But really what it is at least what we're seeing now, it's working as an aid. But like some of y'all said, we also have to be careful for it to not make us more lazy, so to speak, or lose our voice, as Kate said. And so with that, I know we're a little bit over time here, but I want to spend a little bit of time to see if there's any questions from the crowd for our panelists. So any questions from anyone? Yes. And I think we have a mic. Yeah, and you guys can use this one.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. My name is Alfredo Sanchez. This question is for Russell, actually. Russell, you said you took a lot of meetings as a junior staffer, but I missed the part where you said that lobbyists get credit and you get the best info. Can you go over that one more time, please?
I would shoot a lobbyist an email and say, the boss has a question about XYZ, who should I talk to? I would prepare for, before I went to talk to the committee consultant, and I would get multiple different perspectives on an issue, and you approach a committee consultant with having done your homework, and the meeting you get with a committee consultant, they can open up the vault, and they treat staffers differently based on the questions that you bring. If you've done the homework, if you've read the report, if you're asking a question because somebody referenced a report and you were confused, their eyes light up. And are they likely to give you your bill or work with you or treat you differently? It's just it's a whole different avenue. Most people will not get access. There's a network of doers in the Capitol who make things happen. Real staffers, real budgeteers, real members who are doing real work. And for the vast majority of advocacy, you don't even get access to that. People are yelling back and forth and have no impact on the process, where the people who put the work in and engage in relationship building, that network of doers all know each other and are sort of making this place work. And I don't see that going anywhere. I see people using tools to facilitate that, but the doers are still doing.
And I'll just add a little bit to that, where I always like to have my clients be the expert. That's my goal, is so that the member's office, whatever issue it is, they'll be calling and say, "Oh, okay, can you help me, understand this better?" That's one of my goals. I want them to know that my client's one they need to come and talk to about this issue. And so it's important. It's really, that's again, that interaction with members, with staff, it's really, really important. And also, I think, you have to make sure that if a lobbyist lies, they're done. You can never, if you don't know the answer, or it's not going your way, you say, "I'm sorry, this is where my client is, this is the issue, I understand." But if a lobbyist lies, they're done.
Hi, Hi, Monica Miller, Sacramento Advisors. I have two questions, if that's okay. Okay, just cut me off. I'm a talker. So first one's for Russell. In terms of coalition building, how do you engage not only your client but other people's clients if you want to, bring together a group of, say, labor unions or whatever, because you know that there's an issue that they would all be similarly situated on, in joining forces or, business interests, et cetera. So what recommendation would you have?
I'm going hyper-local. I call them custom coalitions. And so I will take the issue and work with the lobbyist to identify the members. And really I'm looking for the members that, say, the business community can't reach. And by can't reach, I just mean they're just not the trusted messenger on a particular issue. And so Monica Miller has you've been representing healthcare interest for a long time. You're a trusted voice with a bunch of different members. And so if an issue is going to have a healthcare impact, I would much rather have your Alzheimer's client speaking to an issue if you're part of the coalition. And maybe I can get on a flight, a Southwest, and go down to the members district and put together some Alzheimer's voices and have those voices meet with the member and explain the issue from their point of view. And so I try and amplify the member of the coalition to the vote that is going to be most persuasive. So as opposed to a message, you might have a business message, a labor message, an environmental message, a social justice message, and delivering those different messages to different members at different times in the process. I think if you're not doing that today, you're missing it. There's just authenticity is what sells, and I'm cringing at some of the stuff. Hey, people care about people of color. And so we got ads that say, this issue is important to people of color. And I'm like, people of color don't call ourselves people of color. Like your message is a little tinny. You're not the trusted voice for that. Different things like that you just need to be very particular, very authentic, and have people speak in their own voice.
So we're over time, but phenomenal questions across the board, and we will have time to network and connect with each other after this. So want to give a round of applause. Thank you to the panelists for their wonderful input. And we are going to announce the raffle winner. So can we get a drum roll? I don't know if, yeah, okay, there we go, yeah. That's good enough, that's good enough. So the raffle winner is Brian, I don't know, I don't want to butcher your name, Rutledge? Yeah, there you go, there's Brian. So congratulations. You can enjoy that wine while using your digital business cards and taking espresso shots from Hawaii. So congratulations. And then I do want to say massive thank you to our team who helped put this together from the Abstract team. Again, this is not about Abstract. This is about us trying to do this real status check of where the industry's at. And I think we should do this again next year. And I think, honestly, we have a lot more people we want to invite to do these talks. So we're really excited. This was an experiment in the best way possible. So appreciate everyone's support here. So with that, we'll wrap it up. And thanks again, everyone, for coming along.